The Devil Wears Prada 2 is now playing in theaters everywhere, although I kind of wish they'd stuck with the original title, Two Devil, Two Prada. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of The Devil Wears Prada 2, which hits theaters 20 years after the first film became a huge box office hit and earned Meryl Streep an Oscar nomination. Good for her. She was due for one of those at that point. Director David Frankel returns for the sequel, as does writer Aline Brosh McKenna, and almost all of the key cast and crew have returned as well. Unlike many other decades-later sequels, this isn't just a familiar brand name under new creative direction. This is a true reunion of the original team. Full disclosure, I didn't see the first movie in theaters because, as a 23-year-old dude at the time, I didn't think that it would really be for me. But I did eventually see it and quite enjoyed it. It's over on my movie shelf right now. So I was hoping for the best with this sequel, though a layoff this long between movies rarely results in anything approaching the magic of the original. Anne Hathaway's Andy Sachs has become a successful journalist in the years since the first film, but finds herself back at Runway at a time when her need for a job syncs up with a PR crisis for the former magazine, now online fashion brand that requires damage control. Taking over as features editor, Andy once again finds herself under the harsh glare of Miranda Priestly, the legendary head of Runway, who resents Andy's return, a decision that was made without her input. Stanley Tucci is back as Nigel, Miranda's overworked, underappreciated right-hand man. Emily Blunt's Emily, that's an easy character name to remember, is now a client of Runway's as a bigwig at Dior, and there are some other new characters as well, including Justin Theroux as a blowhard tech billionaire, Lucy Liu as a reclusive philanthropist, Kenneth Branagh as Miranda's husband, and BJ Novak as the son of Runway's publisher. The trap that a lot of sequels fall into, especially movies that have grown in popularity since they were released, is to essentially repeat the first movie beat for beat, thinking that what audiences want is exactly the same movie again. I was a little worried from the trailers that The Devil Wears Prada 2 was going to fall into that trap, but I was happy to find out that it mostly doesn't. 20 years have passed both on-screen and off-screen since the first movie, and it feels like a world where 20 years have passed. Andy's journalism career is threatened by rampant media consolidation and numerous takeovers. Runway is no longer a print magazine, but an online brand that has to chase clicks and engagement. And while Miranda is still the same rigid, unforgiving presence, she is also being forced to change with the times with everything else. One of the movie's funniest running gags, I thought, is that her new assistant's job is to kind of nudge her when she might be saying something offensive, following multiple HR complaints at the company. Of course, Miranda being Miranda, she usually just says those things anyway. This is not just plopping the same characters in the same situations and pretending that time hasn't passed. The Devil Wears Prada 2 explores new avenues while keeping intact a lot of what worked in the first movie, namely the dynamics between the different characters. Some people might be disappointed that Meryl Streep doesn't get to quite be as venomous in this movie as the first movie, but I liked to see Miranda struggling to change with the times, and she's still venomous enough to send junior staffers scrambling with her mere presence. Hathaway also slips back well into her role as Andy. Her return to Runway doesn't feel like a regression, but an act of desperation. She isn't put back in the same position, having to catch Miranda's purse and keep her schedule. Her new role gives her a lot more power, something that both she and Miranda struggle to adjust to. Tucci's Nigel is the character who's closest to being in the same spot that he was in the last film, but that is addressed. It's part of the plot. And Tucci and Hathaway have a great on-screen relationship. While Miranda claims not to remember Andy, just one of a litany of assistants that she's had over the years, Nigel does, and their friendship grows as they work together once again. The reunion of the cast on screen works, but so does the reunion of the talent behind the camera. Florian Balhaus, who is the cinematographer for the first movie, came back for this one, and can I just say that I really appreciated that this movie looks like a real movie and not one that was shot directly for streaming. Rooms have different color temperatures with varying amounts of light. The windows look out on real streets in real locations with real cars and people. Scenes in New York City are actually shot on the streets of New York. Scenes in Milan are shot in Milan. There doesn't seem to be any green screen or volume backgrounds in sight. Different camera techniques are used for different scenes to give them different energies that are appropriate for what's happening. They're shot at different frame rates on what looks like different film stocks. I don't know if the movie was shot on film, but it looks like it was. And all of this makes the movie feel real, not plastic, and a lot less cheap looking than a lot of movies these days. It's obvious that the makers of this movie knew that fan anticipation was going to be high after 20 years, and The Devil Wears Prada 2 wants to give fans everything they want. But it never comes off as desperate. The movie goes out of its way to give each character their moment, but not in a cynical way. Miranda is much less of a main character, I'd say, this time, and more part of the ensemble, but she still has a towering presence behind her like Meryl Streep, who hasn't lost a step, and the role still feels overpowering. I do think that her character could have been sharpened a little bit more, and at 2 hours, the movie does feel a bit long because it wants to serve every character. I understand, for example, why they wanted to give Andy a romantic subplot, but I don't think it adds much to the movie overall, despite the fact that Hathaway and Patrick Bramall, who plays her boyfriend, do make a very believable and sweet on-screen couple. If a fan of the first movie were to generate a list of everything they'd want in a sequel, I think this movie would probably check off almost everything on that list. Is it as good as the original? I wouldn't say so, but it also doesn't have the advantage of giving us those characters for the first time. It does deliver a lot of satisfying moments that you want for those same characters, but it's able to put those moments into a story that actually makes sense. This feels like a follow-up, not a restaging or a desperate attempt to recreate the magic. The script for the first film, apart from Miranda's character, wasn't its strongest suit. The performances were, and I'd say the same is true here. The talented main cast, most of whom have at least one Oscar nomination to their names, really sells the material, which isn't awful by any stretch of the imagination, and they make us remember why we liked these people in the first place. The Devil Wears Prada 2 isn't an amazing film, but it is light and funny and breezy and well acted, which seems to me like the perfect kind of movie to kick off the summer movie season. So on my personal rating scale, I'm giving The Devil Wears Prada 2 a recommendation and a rating of it's good. If you've been waiting a long time for this movie, I don't think you'll be disappointed. By the way, I can already imagine the comments below saying that this isn't really a summer movie because it's coming out in early May, and a lot of people seem to want to blame me for when the summer movie season starts. Okay, so I see you think this has something to do with time. You go to your calendar and select, I don't know, June as the start of summer because you're trying to tell the world that you understand seasons. And you'll say the first weekend in May isn't summer, it's not fall, it's not winter, it's actually spring. But you may be blithely unaware of the fact that in 1999, Universal released The Mummy on the first weekend of May. And then it was Sony, wasn't it, who released Spider-Man on May 3rd, 2002. And then early May quickly showed up on the summer release schedules of 6 major studios. And the movies filtered through the movie theaters and then trickled on down into your hometown, where you no doubt refused to label them as summer movies. However, early May movies represent hundreds of millions of dollars and I can't tell you how many box office champions. And it's sort of comical how you think you've made a choice that exempts Hollywood from saying when the summer movie season begins, when in fact, you're watching movies released in a season that was selected for you by Hollywood executives from a pile of months. So I'd recommend that you just let the spring thing go, pack away that cerulean winter sweater, and accept that May is the new summer. That's all.